Go ahead and call the meeting to order, and this is the September 3rd, 2020 special call meeting of the City County Planning Commission. And I'll ask Ms. Martin to please call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vogert? Commissioner Warren?
Yes, ma'am.
Your runner.
Yes, ma'am. You've all had a chance to review the summary minutes of the August 20th meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Being none, I'd ask for a motion for approval.
Motion
moved.
approved.
Thank you. We need a second.
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 Thank you.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Abstain.
Commissioner Graham?
Do what?
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Your runner.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Runner, I request that you order that the record include all statutory and regulatory provisions which govern tonight's proceeding. I'd also ask that you include the Commission's entire file for each application and the qualifications for each staff witness. Finally, I'd ask that you administer the oath to each of those witnesses.
So ordered. Do you all swear to tell the truth before this commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Next, we have the subdivision and site development plans. Any questions on those, commissioners? No questions? Then we have the letters of credit and performance bond. We have 2 items. Any questions on those 2 items? No questions, and I'd ask for a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Your runner.
Yes, ma'am. We do not have any unfinished business and no new business, so that takes us to public hearing. The first item, 2020-11 Flume 7+ LLC has filed an application for a future land use map amendment on a portion of a tract of land containing approximately 1.9014 acres located at 6548 Nashville Road from mixed-use residential to commercial. And also, those same applicants have filed docket number 2020-40Z County to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 10.02 acres located at that same address from agriculture to RS1C single-family residential and highway business, both with a general development plan. And we'll have the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on July the 23rd for the property you just described located on Nashville Road. And as you mentioned, there are 2 applications before you this evening. The first is a future land use map amendment. And let me jump to the future land use map really quick. The current future land use designation for the property is split between mixed use residential and also moderate density residential. And the future land use map amendment pertains to the portion of the development that's closest to Nashville Road. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that would be generally in this location here. And so the applicants are proposing to amend the future land use map to commercial for that portion of the development. And if successful, they would like to rezone the same portion of the development to highway business. And the remaining portion of the property, there's no future land use map amendment proposed for the back portion here, but they are proposing to rezone that to RS1C in order to develop the property with a maximum of 27 twin homes, which would contain a total of 54 attached single-family residential units. I'm going to jump back to the current zoning map here. You'll see that the current zoning of the property is agriculture, and the current use of the property, going the wrong way, is also agriculture. You can see that there are agricultural uses kind of scattered to the south of the property, with single-family residential uses also present in the area. And then you'll see that the South Industrial Park is located just to the north. Those are the gray parcels shaded there at the top portion of this map. Moving along, I'll jump back to the future land use map and read through the different descriptions on the next page in your staff report. So first, the mixed use residential category. This area applies to mixed use areas where taken as a whole. The primary land use is residential in a variety of housing types and densities, balanced by complementary retail, office, institutional, and civic uses. The distribution of land among these various activities shall be implemented through specific zoning, with standards addressing the form and character of development to ensure compatibility. This designation applies to urbanized areas being redeveloped with the primary use as residential, where complementary commercial and services are provided in a contiguous area. Here, development standards should be tailored to emphasize an urban character and a mix and intensity of development appropriate to this unique center of activity. When proposed as part of a mixed-use development, commercial uses should comprise only 25% of such development. Standalone commercial developments should not exceed 10% of any contiguous area designated as mixed-use residential. No commercial footprint should exceed 10,000 square feet. Compatibility should be assessed by applying policies in LU 1.1.3 in conjunction with a general development plan. So that's the description for the current future land use designation that's subject to the future land use map amendment. So the applicants are proposing, again, let me actually jump ahead here and zoom in a little bit. So you can see this is the red hatched area here. And so the applicants are proposing to amend this portion of the property to commercial on the future land use map. This designation consists of a broad array of commercial development, including individual commercial businesses that may exist along a highway corridor or a business district, as well as larger planned shopping centers and office parks. Limited high-density multifamily uses are allowed to be mixed into commercial areas. These uses should be limited to upper stories or blended in or scattered among commercial uses. No more than 25% of any contiguous area designated as commercial should contain a multifamily use. Compatibility should be addressed by applying the policies in LU 1.1.3 in conjunction with the general development plan. And so you'll see, moving on through the staff report, LU 1.1.4 from the comprehensive plan, this section outlines the procedures to amend the future land use map. And so the applicants included the statement at the bottom of the page on your staff report there. This should be at the bottom of page 2. And this is what was provided to help address the criteria outlined in LU 1.1.4. This statement says, given the extensive commercial zonings in the immediate area, including highway business, and the sufficiency of existing infrastructure, the proposed future land use map classification and use is compatible. So that was what was listed on the future land use map amendment application that was submitted. So the Planning Commission should consider if this argument provided by the applicants to amend the future land use map meets the criteria listed in LU 1.1.4. Moving on to page 3, I'm just going to touch on a few things in the site characteristics review criteria. Let me jump to the preliminary development plan that was submitted, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit here. Okay. So this is the proposed layout for the development. Again, the front portion here is proposed to be rezoned to highway business, with the balance of the property proposed to be rezoned to RS1C to develop attached single-family twin homes. There are 2 stub streets provided to adjacent properties to the top portion of the screen here and then below here at the bottom. Under fire protection, moving through the site characteristics review, we've noted that the property is served by the Woodburn Volunteer Fire Department. And under wastewater adequacy, we've noted that the property is located within 2,000 feet of public sewer and will connect to sewer if the proposal is approved. I'm going to jump back to the density map here. Let's see. All right, so densities in the area for existing subdivisions range from 0.21 dwelling units per acre to 18.25 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density for the RS1C portion of the development is 6.58 dwelling units per acre. Moving down to building materials, the surrounding homes are constructed of a mixture of brick or vinyl. Nearby commercial and industrial buildings are constructed of metal and masonry materials. Metal buildings are prohibited for the commercial development across the street. I'll jump back to the zoning map here. That's in reference to the general business parcels across the street. The applicants identified the proposed building materials and foundation materials for the RS1C portion of the development in development plan condition number 1, which I'll get to in just a second. And they also identified proposed foundation materials for the highway business portion of the development in development plan condition number 5. And they also specified primary materials for the primary facades. This was submitted earlier today in an email from Mr. Chris Davenport, who I believe will attest to this here in just a minute. But there were a few revisions to the development plan conditions, which I'll get to in just a second. So that will change a little bit of the information in the staff report. Also referencing proposed open space, there were a couple of new development plan conditions submitted for that as well. So I'll touch on that just in just a second here. Moving on to the section in your staff report relating to the traffic impact study requirements. Section 314 of the zoning ordinance outlines the requirements for a traffic impact study. And this section also states that exceptions to this requirement may be approved after consultation between the applicant and the affected agencies, and that if an agreement can be made between all parties to anticipate the project's impact and the necessary means of mitigation, that a traffic impact study may not be necessary. And so you'll see there in, I guess, almost in the middle portion of the page that the traffic impact study was waived by both the Warren County Public Works Department and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The only requirement was from the Warren County Public Works Department, and that was that a left and right turn lane from the proposed development onto US 31W, which is Nashville Road, be installed. And if I jump back to the preliminary development plan here, you'll see that those turn lanes would be located here at the entrance to the development as you're turning on to Nashville Road out of the proposed development. And these were agreed to in the development plan conditions, which I'll touch on next. So first, we're going to go through the development plan conditions for the highway business portion of the development. So that's the front portion here, closest to Nashville Road. Number 1 outlines prohibited uses and states that no part of the property shall be used as vehicle class 6 and above fuel pumps, vehicle class 6 and above weight scales, a bingo hall, pawn shop, tattoo parlor, light aviation, off-premise advertising sign, telecommunication tower, commercial parking lot, or any use which would result in excessive noise or excessive vibrations beyond the confines of the property. These restrictions apply to all structures on the property and not just a primary structure. Number 2, structures shall be oriented toward Nashville Road. 3, no structure shall exceed 2 stories. 4, any sinkholes shall be either mitigated or utilized as part of the property's groundwater retention plan. 5, no structure will include exposed plain face or split face block foundations. 6, the developer shall install dedicated left and right turn lanes onto US 31W. 7, the development shall have uniform street lighting. 8, access to the development shall be coordinated with and approved by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and Warren County Public Works Department. 9, the developer shall preserve all mature and healthy trees, not existing within building envelopes or areas of vehicular traffic or parking. And then there were 3 new development plan conditions that were emailed to staff earlier today. So the 3 that I'm going to read are new and they are not in your staff report. So number 10, exterior facades of any building shall be constructed of stone, brick, hardy board, or similar material. No vinyl or metal siding shall be allowed. 11, any freestanding sign shall be a maximum of 20 feet in height and include a maximum of 50 square feet of sign face. And then 12, the development shall include a minimum of 25% open space. Next, we're going to move on to the proposed development plan conditions for the RS1C portion of the development. Again, so that would be this balance of the property here to the rear. Number 1, all twin homes will contain at a minimum a 1-car attached garage. All exteriors of all residences shall be comprised at a minimum of 80% brick, stone, ephes, hardy board, or other similar material. No structure will include exposed plain face or split face block foundations. 2, the property shall be developed with no more than 27 twin homes. 3, no structure shall exceed 2 stories. 4, the development shall be served by internal streets. 5, any sinkhole shall be either mitigated or utilized as part of the property's groundwater retention plan. 6, mentions the dedicated left and right turn lanes on the US 31W. 7, the development shall have uniform street lighting. 8, each single-family residence shall be constructed with a minimum square footage of 1,250 square feet of living space. 9, the developer shall preserve all mature and healthy trees not existing within building envelopes or areas of vehicular traffic or parking. And last, there was 1 new development plan condition submitted, and that, number 10, states that the development shall include a minimum of 40% open space. Moving on to the Focus 2030 category review, staff evaluated 20 items from the comprehensive plan and found 9 of those items to be in compliance, and then there were 11 items that the Planning Commission should evaluate for compliance, and I'm going to touch on those 11 items now. So the first of those being LU 1.1.1 and LU 1.1.2. The proposal may comply with these items and with the future land use map if deemed compatible with the surrounding area and the future land use map amendment to commercial is approved. Next, LU 1.1.3, which looks at compatibility. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area, and due to the revisions that were submitted earlier today, this language will be a little bit different. So items of compatibility that the Planning Commission should evaluate include hours of operation for the highway business portion of the development and utility placement for both the highway business and RS1C portions of the development. Next, LU2 and LU2.1. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a high quality development that includes design standards tailored to preserve the character of the area. Next, LU 2.1.1, which looks at open space for residential development. The staff report that was mailed out last week states that the proposal does not comply with LU 2.1.1, but due to the revisions that were submitted earlier today, the proposal now generally complies with this item because the applicants did provide a minimum of 40% open space within the RS1C portion of the development in the revised development plan conditions. Next, I'm going to jump down to HN1, HN1.2, and HN1.3. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a compatible infill development that will maintain or improve the existing character and pattern of development within the area, and if it will strengthen the existing area. Next, HN 2.1 and HN 4. The Planning Commission should determine if the location of the planned development is suitable for the proposed housing type, and if the proposed development is believed to enhance the array of housing options available in the area. And last, the Planning Commission should determine compliance with ED1 and if the proposed development will help to diversify the local economy. With that, I'm going to jump back to the points to consider on page 1 of the staff report. These will be slightly different, again, due to the revised development plan conditions that were emailed earlier today. So first, the Planning Commission should consider if the argument provided by the applicants to amend the future land use map meets the criteria outlined in LU 1.1.4 of the comprehensive plan. Second, if the future land use map amendment is approved, the highway business portion of the proposal would be consistent with the future land use map and commercial category. The RS1C portion of the proposal is consistent with the future land use map and with the mixed use residential and moderate density residential categories. Third, the proposed development complies with a majority of the site characteristics review criteria and the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements in the zoning ordinance. And finally, the Planning Commission should consider if the proposed development, including the hours of operation for the highway business portion of the development and utility placement for both portions of the development, are compatible with the surrounding area. I believe that is all I have for the staff report, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
Rachel,
Nikki.
would you mind going through those additional highway business
Yes, I can do that.
items?
Let me get back to those here. So there were three new
Development plan
development plan. Yep, there were three new development plan conditions that were submitted today. The first deals with the building materials for the exterior facades of any building on the property. So new number 10 states that exterior facades of any building shall be constructed of stone, brick, hardy board, or similar material. No vinyl or metal siding shall be allowed. Second, any freestanding sign shall be a maximum of 20 feet in height and include a maximum of 50 square feet of sign face. And third, the development shall include a minimum of 25% open space.
Right. And also, Rachel, could you, you referred to the development across the street. Is the development across the street, does it have a facade only exterior restriction, or is it similar to this number 10 that you just recited in the new development plan conditions?
Let me pull that up and I can tell you exactly what it says. It says, no metal buildings will be allowed. All buildings must have exteriors of architectural metal, brick, stone, hardy board, ephes, vinyl, or similar material. Any part of a building facing McClellan Road shall have exteriors of brick, stone, hardy board, ephes, or vinyl, no standing seam metal.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, they do not address a facade only, they just address the exterior. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Across the street, yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rachel, where's the 40% open space on the conception plan you have up there? Where the 40%? Where is that located?
Mr. Davenport or Mr. Slavey may want to speak to this, but I believe it's the intent that just overall for the entire portion of the residential development that there would be a minimum of 40% open space overall.
But what we're looking at tonight is not the correct concept plan, correct?
They didn't revise the concept plan. If you look at this, and I don't know the exact amount of lot coverage shown here or development coverage shown here, I believe that, I mean, this is, at this point, this is a concept. So the lot configuration, if you choose to approve this application this evening, could shift slightly, but overall with the footprints shown, the driveway shown, just at a glance, it would appear to meet the 40%.
It would?
It would appear so, yes.
Not question, but where is that? I don't see that other than on the back lots. Where you've got the arrow right there. Where's the 40%?
Let me zoom in. Essentially, and again, the applicants may want to verify this, you would take, you know, the backyards of all of the homes here, and then along the bottom portion here and the side yards, basically any area that's not covered with a building footprint or driveway would count toward that 40% open space.
Okay, I just thought when we talked about open space, we were talking about a green space, but now on this concept, we're counting the yards and the retention areas.
Now, I will say that if you read in the comprehensive plan, and maybe I misstated in the presentation, if you all feel otherwise, I believe that the way the action item is worded is that you should determine if the open space provided, let me jump to the exact wording here. Bear with me, please. I thought it was attached. Let's see, it should be at the end in one of the supplemental pages here. Okay, so it's on page 31 of your packet, LU 2.1.1. It says that the Planning Commission should consider increasing or refining the standards for open space retention and new residential development to ensure that an adequate share of such space is usable and of scenic or ecological value. So that is up to your determination. If you feel that the open space provided overall as a whole is sufficient and usable, and also for each individual lot that is shown, that is essentially what that item is asking you to evaluate. So I think when I read through the presentation, I said that the new revised development plan condition would make that a generally in compliance item, but if you feel otherwise, that is certainly okay.
I wasn't questioning, I was just trying to understand it, because when we don't receive the actual report until the time of the meeting. You just have to kind of figure this out.
Sure.
So Rachel, may I expand on that question? Because my recollection was similar to Dean's in that I thought we could count retention basins and et cetera, but I was not aware that we could count basically any space except for the structure itself.
That's correct.
Now I think that may be the case in the subdivision regulations, and Ben may want to jump in here. So I think we may be mixing the subdivision regulation requirements with the suggestions or action items outlined in the comprehensive plan. I think they're not necessarily one and the same.
I see. Okay. So that may be where the confusion lies.
I would be interested in knowing just how much space is between those houses.
So the minimum required in the zoning ordinance, based on the proposed RS1C zoning district, would be a 7.5 foot side yard setback. So if you add those two together, let me zoom in here. So you would have 7.5 feet here and 7.5 feet on this side. So total between the two buildings, you would have 15 feet. And that's the minimum.
Is that to the roof? I'm sorry, Rachel, is that to the roof overhang or is that to the building?
That is to the building foundation itself.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will a fire truck fit through there with the roof on there?
No.
You mean
No.
Probably not.
between the two buildings?
Yes.
It would be difficult depending on the width of the truck, but some of them are quite large.
So that could be a fire safety hazard. Okay.
Well, normally if there were a fire, the truck would pull up on the main street, and they would normally have enough hose line where they could stretch that between buildings, you know, to navigate to the rear portion of the lot or the side and that sort of thing.
Are we looking at a convenience store at the front?
The use is actually unknown. There was no specific use listed when the application was submitted. Now, I believe that what's shown on here would appear to be a convenience store with fuel pumps out front.
And do we have hours of operation?
No, hours of operation were not submitted.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Rachel before we hear from Mr. Davenport? He may be able to clear some of these. questions of. Any other questions for Rachel?
Rachel, this is Rick Starks. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The applicant, when they met with you, were they aware of, do they realize what open space, are they assuming that the open space that we're talking about is behind the buildings?
I think that the way that the development plan condition was submitted, the way it is worded, it just reads that overall in the entire residential portion of the development, that between all of the lots, total, there would be at least 40% open space.
Okay, so not only the space behind the buildings, but the space that encompasses areas between the structures also, right?
Yes, it could include side yards, front
Okay.
yards, drainage areas.
Okay, okay.
But there's no way of, no greenways, trails, no sidewalks, anything
Sidewalks,
like that
sidewalks are required as a part
on
of the
both
subdivision.
sides?
Not necessarily on both sides, but at least one. That's the requirement in the subdivision regulations. There is no greenway trail proposed or within proximity of this development.
Thank you.
Anything else before we hear from the applicant? Okay, then we'll get Mr. Davenport. Is he with us?
I'm here, Chair Runner. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
I'm here on behalf of 7 Plus LLC and its principal, Dr. Wanguma, who is seated behind me, probably off camera. The engineer for this project, Lucas Slavey, is also present. As always, Ms. Hurt's done a good job of outlining the what, when, and the where here. A couple points I would accentuate. As she mentioned to you, the flume that you have before you is needed and applicable to the frontage parcel of 1.9 acres. The RS1C does not require a flume amendment. So just want to point that out to you. Second point I'll make is, and Rachel, if you could pull up the zoning map, that would help me illustrate this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this area has seen a fair amount of development and rezoning in the last 2 years. The tracks across the street, one of those purple highway business tracks my client owns. I would point that out. But the area across the street primarily was the Franklin Berry estate. Some of the commissioners may recall that was Mr. Berry, a local attorney. That was his estate that was sold sometime in the last 2 years. To help with that auction, I think Mr. Hunt performed that auction. That property was partitioned out. We rezoned that property. I say we, I was involved in it. Gave that property some new development plan conditions. At that time, we still called them binding elements, but they were the same thing that applied to those parcels. So when Dr. Wanguma brought this project to me, knowing that he wanted, and he was desiring highway business on this frontage lot, I pulled my file, looked to see what we had done and what the commission had approved across the street. And so the prohibited uses on our application are the same prohibited uses with some refinements that the staff requested. There were some redundancies, some things that are already not allowed in highway business that we removed because that would have been redundant. But apart from that, we restricted the same uses that were restricted across the street. I'll tell you, Commissioner Clark, the question you had was whether this is going to be a C store, a convenience store. My client does not know that. We don't know the ultimate intended and ultimate use of the highway business parcel. That concept plan shows 4 pumps because at one time there was a discussion with staff about a C store with 4 pumps, not requiring a flume amendment. But we haven't touched that concept because we don't know exactly what that will be. I'll tell you that he's in talks with Goodwill, but that's not final. There's nothing inked on that. So hopefully that answers that question. But the point of the map I want to bring out here is, excuse me, the current flume would allow general business. We're asking for highway business, and we think both the commercial flume designation and that zoning is compatible with the area, as I stated in the application, particularly when you look at the uses that are currently zoned both adjacent across Nashville Road and in the area general. You'll see of the properties that are adjacent to us, either A, they haven't developed, i.e. the ag to the north, or they've developed into highway business. And then if you go and look further out, you'll see additional highway business, heavy industry, and light industry. The two parcels across the road from us that are, two of those parcels include the Dollar General store that Rachel has mentioned. That property was further developed after the Franklin Berry estate. So Rachel was able to give us some additional development plan conditions that apply to the Dollar General store that don't apply to those other highway business properties. Those primarily, Commissioner Graham, include those exterior materials and the sign limitation. And so since those have been added most recently, that's why my client supplemented and agreed to abide by those same restrictions that you find across the street. Limiting the height of the sign square footage, and then requiring, and I think we actually go a step further because those Dollar General DPCs, as I understand them, do provide or allow for vinyl. We've eliminated that. Our building will be completely stone, brick, or hardy board. No vinyl and no metal siding. So I just wanted to make sure, because in large part, I think this what you're looking at, commissioners, is exhibitive of why this is compatible with the area, given the highway business, the commercial flume designation that requires, and given the materials and other development restrictions we have agreed to in line with those other properties.
What
Chris,
about the
Tim Graham
sale?
here.
Go ahead.
Pardon me, Chris, Tim Graham here.
Yes, sir.
Could we circle back to that highway business portion and that DPC regarding the exterior finishes?
Sure.
In the description that I think I understood, and of course, bear with me, it's not before us, so I'm doing this from memory. It referenced only the front facade. Would your client be open to making that 3 sides instead of just the front facade?
Actually, I'll take you a step further, Commissioner Graham. As I've proposed it, I believe it reads that all exteriors shall be constructed of. It's intended to apply to all 4 sides.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. But if I understood when it was read back, it said I thought it said the front facade, but that was not your intent. Is that correct?
No, sir. Well,
Commissioner Graham, I think those were the.
I'm sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
I think those were the development plan conditions across the street. When you asked that I read those, there was some differences on the facades across the street.
So just for clarification, just to make sure I understand, that development plan condition is for the full exterior. Is that correct?
It is. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just to further expand upon that and maybe explain it from my client's perspective, he's developed the single family to the rear. And so,
I see.
he doesn't want to diminish that development either by what would be the back of a commercial building being unsightly to the view of that single family development. Now, there will have to be landscape buffering in the between these 2 developments. It's required by the zoning ordinance given the commercial use and the single family use. I don't want to overlook that. It will be a higher level of buffering that will be required by the ordinance, but nonetheless, he doesn't want to do anything to diminish the rear development.
Great, thank you.
I think
Rachel,
Commissioner Clark maybe had a question too.
excuse me.
Did.
Rachel, are you satisfied that the DPCs as presently submitted by the applicant require exterior building material restrictions on all facades in the highway business portion of the application?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Davenport, I didn't see restrictions on alcohol, pornography, a lot of those basic things because of the proximity of schools and everything. Is there any reason why those were left out of the design?
None
Development.
other than when I copy and pasted those restrictions that are placed across the street, Commissioner Clark, for whatever reason, those aren't in there either. So I actually talked to my client about adult entertainment. Again, he has no intention, liquor sales, no intention of that. That will diminish the rear development of his property. But again, in going with the restrictions that are in the area, that's what I utilized.
Well, I'd like to see them add that if you don't mind.
Commissioner
The
Clark,
alcohol.
just to confirm, adult entertainment is not permitted in highway business.
There you go. Thank you, Rachel.
Liquor sales is considered adult entertainment?
No, ma'am, it's not.
Okay. Could we add liquor sales into that?
And Dr. Wanguma has given me the affirmative shake that we will agree to prohibit that liquor sales in the DPC.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir.
You're welcome.
Chris, do you intend to limit the sale of beer or just packaged liquor?
Packaged liquor is what I intended.
Okay.
Correct.
Oh, I'm asking for all liquor. Would he not consider all liquor with the close proximity of the schools and everything?
Yeah. I don't mind liquor. I don't mind packaged liquor. I guess that depends. I think when you get into liquor sales, typically we either talk about packaged liquor or liquor by the drink, which would be a restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. And staff, please speak up if I'm talking out of turn here. But a liquor store would be packaged liquor sales, what we would typically ban.
Chris, that's consistent with other applications as far as how that would be defined.
Yeah.
Packaged liquor sales would be what you would typically find with a liquor store. But if packaged liquor sales are prohibited in the development plan conditions, that would not prevent the sale of beer or even liquor by the drink in conjunction with a restaurant.
So what I would, so there's clarity on that. What I would propose would be a prohibition against packaged liquor sales. And the intent there would be to not allow a liquor store to go into that property. It would allow, for complete transparency, Commissioner Clark, if there was a restaurant there, it could operate as any normal restaurant would if it had a liquor license.
Okay, I guess I still have the mind of a convenience store that would like to not have alcohol sales in a convenience store, a beer, wine, any of that.
Well, I guess my point on that, Commissioner Clark, would be that is allowed in all those commercial businesses across the street and the highway business that's next door to us. I know some of the commissioners had a question about the open space. I don't want to overlook that. The ordinance requires 30% open space for the RS1C. It requires 10% in the commercial. When we got the staff report, we noted, and I'll get the policy wrong, but I think it's LU 2.1.1 maybe, that there's a preference or there is a policy that suggests that you should consider maybe adding additional open space. So as I understand it, that policy or that open space basically is a reference to lot coverage. So we did agree to up the open space on the RS1C from 30 to 40%, and we upped the open space on the highway business from 10% to 25%, I believe, as Rachel read to you. So I don't really I'm not involved in the subdivision, or at least I don't think I have been in the past. So as far as any incongruency between what the subdivision regs require and the zoning ordinance requires, I can't really speak to that. All I can say is that in RS1C, you're looking at a minimum of 30. We've upped that by a third to 40%. And although some people may look at that and say, conceptually, they may have an opinion about that. I guess the point I would make is that one of the policies that you're weighing here, as Rachel pointed out, is the variability in housing types. And so you do have a lot of people that would like a half-acre yard, but these twin homes are really designed for folks who don't really want that. These are folks that want a smaller yard for upkeep purposes. And so I would argue that if you required, an extensive amount of open space in all single-family lots, you wouldn't be meeting, you'd probably be sacrificing that variability policy and giving people a variability in housing types, housing prices, price points, and so forth. The only other thing I'll add is that, as Rachel pointed out, we've met the traffic waiver requirements that were given to us. We've agreed to those traffic improvements. We do have the connectivity to the adjoining lots, which we are required to do. So if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer those. But I think that's probably the high points that I would want to point out to you.
Chris, I have one question, just a point of clarification, I guess. Based on the open space that you described, is it your intention that that open space would actually refer to lot coverage, and that the open space would be per lot within the development and not an overall percentage?
I guess what I was, and then Lucas is on this call too. So, as the engineer, I don't mean to throw Lucas under the bus, but when we talk about open space, and because I look at that plan like Commissioner Warren, and I'm like, it's Greek to me. Okay. My understanding is that when the zoning ordinance requires an aggregate amount of open space. So in other words, an aggregate amount of lot coverage, I guess is probably the more succinct way to put that. I'll say, and Lucas, if I'm wrong, if you're still out here, chime up. Frankly, we've committed to 40%, knowing that our concept plan provides a fair amount more than that, believe it or not. But I don't want to get my client I don't like to cut the margin too tight. So he knows the square footage of these homes he wants to build. Those are what's reflected on the concept plan. He knows how many we think we can put in there. That's what's on the concept plan. Lucas has told me what the aggregate amount of lot coverage and the resulting open space is. We've committed to less than that to give us some wiggle room. But we also know that we won't build out that many lots, because when we get in there with the water retention and we start engineering it and you build the roads, the concept plan is kind of build your church for Easter. I think rarely does that ever happen, if ever. So to answer your question, Rachel, my understanding is it's an aggregate, that the development, the total lot coverage on the development, we're saying cannot exceed 60%.
Okay.
If I may chime in here, that is true in a sense. Where I came up with that number, that I picked the worst lot, the smallest lot, and used that to base my overall aggregate number on. So it works very well, and there's at least a minimum of that on the worst lot as far as coverage goes. But when you spread that out over the whole thing, we're going to be above that just because of the larger lots, the bigger drainage areas. So I looked at it as a worst case scenario, but when you take it as a whole for the whole subdivision, it works out aggregate the same way as looking at it as an individual lot. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It will actually be to the better as far as open space in the long run as a whole, because we use the smallest lot we could use.
Mr. Slavy, this is Velma Runner. You did swear to tell the truth on everything you just said, didn't you, sir?
I did, and I do have my right hand raised.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry about that.
That's quite all right, sir. These are unusual circumstances.
And I think Lucas did a great job of crawling out from underneath the bus. I think he's done that now.
It's cold
Hey,
under here, though.
Lucas, Tim Graham here. Let me just expand on this just a little bit. I want to make sure I understand. You took you took the highest density lot or the smallest lot, and then you subtracted. So basically, your minimum, which is 1,250 square feet per lot. Is that correct? From the total lot coverage?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I use, just for reference, if you're looking at the screen there, that little lot right above the N in preliminary, which is the absolute smallest lot I could pick. And
got it.
So that is where
So
we're
by
at.
necessity, you're actually going to exceed what you're describing as your minimum because you got some of these lots that are larger, you're going to have retention basin. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have anything else for the applicant?
Chris, don't let us forget to get your client up and let him attest to the revised development plan conditions and the changes we've made here tonight.
Let's do that real quick, Camp, if we might.
If Ms. Runner agrees, I think it's a good time.
Okay.
That's wonderful, Mr. Moore. You have to keep me in line. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address for us, please.
Nyuziri Wanguma, 908 Greenwood Circle, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42103.
And you swear to tell the truth before this commission?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Wayne Guma, did you hear those development plan conditions that we've added tonight?
Yes.
Dealing with maximum signage, maximum sign height, the exteriors of the commercial properties, the open space, and then the prohibition against packaged liquors?
Yes.
Do you agree to those development plan conditions?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, do you have any more questions before I see if there's anyone in the audience? Anyone else online that has a question? Do we have opposition to this request tonight?
Chair Runner, we do have a couple of people online. Give them just a couple seconds to see if they can unmute themselves and see who wants to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, we've tried to unmute.
There you go.
All right, we have a
Okay.
connection.
Okay.
If I could get your name and address, please. This is Velma.
Okay. Wayne and Mary Hatcher at 47 Dillard Road. 470 Dillard Road. And the back of our farm is within 200 feet of this development. And we have several points of contention on this. One is.
May I interrupt you, sir? You
Yes.
do swear to tell the truth before. You do swear to tell the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. Now go ahead, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Okay, that's all right. I was making notes and I made several notes beforehand, but I had several concerns here. One is if this is a high quality development compared with the other residential sections in the area, and I do not feel that it is. I calculated some of this open space, and I have a concern with open space and green space in this. Also, compatible, this is agriculture, and the compatibility of this to the other Also, the drainage, the liability, and the price point of the property. And I'm assuming these properties would be sold to individual owners or to someone that would rent. And if they rent, would it be in a Section 8? There is a lots of concerns from Mary and I, and also our neighbors in the area. We feel like it would devalue our property. It would hamper our farming operation from a liability standpoint. We have been in the horse business. We got a 15 stall barn there with a 100 foot by 70 foot riding arena. And when you got horses around and you got children within 200 feet, that's a magnet. And this would run our liability up considerably. It would hamper income from this property. So those are all the concerns that I have. And the drainage, the way this property is laid, it would drain down into our neighbor's property, across our neighbor's property, that 200 feet or less. Actually, it's less than 200 feet, and be into our area where we would be running cattle or would be running horses, and the horses don't like mud holes to run in. And that is a problem from a disease standpoint, health standpoint on animals, and a general appearance. And about the only way that I could keep people out, children, is put up a 10-foot chain link fence with razor wire on it. So I'm highly opposed to this map change, future land use map change for the area, because I feel like it's not compatible, and the price points there, the liability, the drainage,
And it would damage us.
and it would certainly damage us and our neighbors with single family residents in the area. Mary, do you have anything to say? That is my concern, and I came online tonight. My understanding, if y'all approve this map reading thing,
Future land use amendment.
map amendment, and you approve the zoning, that it would go to the court and would be debated there. And I understood if I didn't oppose it tonight, I wouldn't be able to
Testify at the physical court.
couldn't testify at the physical court or take my attorney with me to the court. And I have and other things about this proposal. I've been on both sides of the desk on developing land and stuff like that. And anytime I've ever been, I always had exactly what I was going to do. There is too many ifs, ands, and buts here. We don't really know. It's a concept instead of a proposal. So that concept could turn into lots of things, and it could be, and probably would be, an eyesore to the general neighborhood plus the other businesses up and down the road. That's my feeling and my objection to the proposal and to the future land use map amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sir, could we ask you how big your farm is and how many horses you might have right now?
It's 11.5 acres.
And we've had up to...
I've had up to 21 horses there at a time.
At a time, and we try
Generally,
to...
average is 15.
And we try to keep it looking nice and everything. And if you drive down Dillard Road, you'll see our house with a solar panel in front of a large barn and a plank fence across the front behind the solar panel. Some of you may know where we're located at.
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all speaking out. And definitely I understand your agricultural concerns.
Do we have anything else before we hear from, I think there's someone else on for opposition?
Oh, I've said, or I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has. But other than that, I'm finished, and I appreciate y'all's time and consideration.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peterson, you said we have someone else waiting.
Yes, the Woodcocks, I believe, have sent us a message saying that they agree with those last comments. I'm not sure if they want to add to that or not.
The Woodcocks, is there anything that you'd like to add? Nothing else.
Looks like they're wanting to know how to unmute, so they're, let me see. I can hit that button if that'll help them.
That will help.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, we've got you now. This is Velma Runner. We'll go ahead and get you sworn in. If you would state your name and address, please.
It's Ricky and Gail Woodcock, 394 Dillard Road.
And you swear to tell the truth?
Yes, we swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you both. And you can make your statement or ask your question.
We have the same concerns as the Hatchers because our property actually backs up to the right corner on the map where the drainage area is. Our biggest concern with that is how much water is going to be retained there, and is it going to flood our property from the other side, and the mosquito population. We're already eat up with mosquitoes here anyway.
I can try to answer that. This is Lucas Slavey. I'll be the engineer if this goes through, and we will have to control our drainage. We cannot allow any excess water to run off this site that runs off of it now. So any new water we generate will have to be controlled and run off at a rate consistent with what it is now. And we typically, in a design situation, we try to go above and beyond the minimum. So we try to make that better than it is. So.
Well, with that being said, that area in the right-hand corner is already a considerable sinkhole there. So are we going to have runoff water that's running into Lost River Cave, or are we going to contain it to a pond, or what?
It will continue to run off. We just will have to control it where it doesn't run off any faster than it does now. And we typically try to treat sediment. We try to treat the water before we send it into the cave system, absolutely, and we'll protect the sinkholes as we do this.
Okay, and like Mr. Hatcher said, are these homes, the duplexes, going to be sold, or are they going to be rented? Are they going to be Section 8 houses? Because that's going to decline the value of our property backing up to it.
I'll speak to that, Luke. Commissioner Runner or Chair Runner, I'll speak to that whenever, I guess, any opposition's finished, if that pleases the chair.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Has there been any discussion about fencing around this property in order to keep people off of these farms and everything, and the horses? Has there been any discussion at all about fencing or anything?
I guess I can take that one, Commissioner Clark. Turn my video on. This is Chris. There has not, and I guess I would want to make this point clear, because I think there was some confusion for Mr. Hatcher on this too. He mentioned that, he thinks this would be bad for the single-family homes in the area. This is a single-family home rezoning. This is not a multi-family home rezoning. The intention and what's being requested is the construction of single-family homes in compliance with the ordinance. And I really don't want to get into all the differences between single-family homes and multi-family homes and what that means as for who can live in them and all that. I really don't want to get into that, frankly. I don't think it's necessary, but this is a single-family home development. This is not multi-family. And frankly, I'm not going to speak to who would be living there other than these are single-family homes. I know it often comes up before the commission. Who's going to be living there? Are people going to be renting these? What's the rental price? And I think it's pretty well established. I don't think that's a proper topic for the city, for a planning commission. But again, these are single family homes. This is not a multifamily development. And so to the issue of fencing, I don't think there hasn't been any discussion, and I don't think it's common that we require fencing around single family developments. At least I don't recall that being the norm, certainly.
We would have to put up a fence for our own liability.
Yeah. Well, it's.
If it's a single family residence, are you talking about single homes as in 27 homes, or are you talking about 54 duplex homes?
So these and I think, is that Mr. Hatcher?
That's Mr. Woodcock.
Mr. Woodcock, forgive me. These are what we call twin homes. And so the difference, I think, and I get this could be confusing, and Rachel, if I misspeak, correct me, but a duplex is typically owned by one entity, one person, who then sublets one or two pieces of a duplex. That's not what this is. These are twin homes that have basically a zero lot line. So they can be owned separately. And I don't know if that's an adequate description, Rachel. You might do a better job than that than me, but.
May expand just a little bit. I tried to zoom in on the preliminary development plan. And so if you look at what was submitted, you'll see that there are 2 dwelling units per building, and there is a separation between the 2. There is actually a property line that runs between the 2 dwelling units. So these are what we would consider to be a single family attached dwelling unit, to where each home is on its own lot and can be sold individually.
I have a question as far as the proposal stated one-car garage. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what's depicted on this concept plan we're looking at.
Okay.
Chris, Tim Graham here. Just as a point of clarification, that is one-car garage per lot. Is that correct?
Correct. Per single family unit. So these twin homes.
Per dwelling unit.
Yeah, these twin homes encompass 2 dwelling units. So they're one for each unit.
Thank you.
And I don't know, Chair Runner, if you want me to address the other points that Mr. Hatcher made.
Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
The only other thing I would add here is that there was a question about whether this is a quality development. Again, you've heard from Rachel, sidewalks required in the subdivision regs. Although it's not spoken here, we've gotten away in these applications from redundancy. So, we used to always put that this would be on sewer in our DPCs. And the staff, says now, they don't really want us to do that because it's got to be on sewer pursuant to what you're asking for. So, and the lot sizes and so forth. So this is going to have sidewalks. These are 100% brick buildings, these single family homes. So where Rachel said that in the area you've got brick and vinyl, you've got a mix, we're not using vinyl in these homes. She talked to you about the density in the area. At the high end, it's over 16. And that right there ought to tell you there's multifamily in this area. And there's a good portion of it. This is this area, when you look at it, truly has about every use imaginable. It's all the way from single family or to ag on the undeveloped part of things, all the way up to heavy industry within a stone's throw of here. So another thing I'll say is, and I don't blame Mr. Hatcher for this, it takes a while in doing a number of these hearings to appreciate the fact, he mentioned the flume map. The comments by Mr. Woodcock and Mr. Hatcher are entirely to the RS1C portion of this development. That's not applicable to the flume. That development is already flume compliant, as is. The flume is only being requested for that 1.9 acre parcel on the front that is adjacent to highway business to its left and across the road already. And really, we are basically mirroring in that commercial property what already exists immediately adjacent to it. So I appreciate the fact that this is a residential development that's in an area that still has large parcels and is frankly in a state of development right now. But that's why even the back flume here is designated as mixed-use residential, which also allows a commercial component. So I would just stress that although it may not look like every neighborhood, this is a single-family development that we're requesting. And it is not uncommon in Warren County. There have been a number of single-family developments with this twin home concept in the last probably 2 years. I know the commissioners are aware of that. So given all those facts, I would ask for a motion or a vote both to amend the flume and then approve the rezonings. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport.
Ms.
Commissioner?
Runner,
Yes.
many times when we do single family, we do have a condition that there's no parking on the streets. This was not addressed in this zoning map amendment in a residential area. Is that something that we overlooked, or is that just something that is
Back.
good?
Commissioner Warren, I may speak to that a little bit. I guess there's not anything in the comprehensive plan that would necessarily recommend a prohibition of on-street parking. But I can say that in some single-family rezoning applications that have been before you in recent years, that those were just voluntary commitments that were made by the applicant, just based, I guess, on their own vision for the development at that time.
So given the density of this development, would the developer be willing to commit to that?
I can talk to my client. That's not, and the commissioner, where my hesitancy, frankly, is even if he did.
Because there's not an HOA, correct?
No, that's correct. It becomes the obligation of the code enforcement staff to enforce that, frankly.
So,
a lot of those types of conditions, the staff asked me to make those plat restrictions once a plat's recorded, so that the code enforcement staff is not given those responsibilities, because that could be a lot to ask.
if I may add something to that too, So this, typically those restrictions are handled by the subdivision regulations too. Once the design of this is submitted, I assume this is intended to be a public road, Chris, is that?
Yeah, I think it is. That's correct.
Yeah, so before Warren County would approve those plans and accept those, they could make the determination of whether or not on-street parking would be allowed, or they may require, say, a 30-foot width of pavement instead of 24, which is 24 would be the minimum. So they would have that ability to do that. And then since it'd be a public right-of-way, then that would actually be enforced by the Warren County Sheriff's Office at that point in time, and or Public Works.
So Ben, if this is approved tonight, it's up to the Warren County Public Works to decide the width of the street and basically the on-street parking.
That is correct. The other things they'll look at too is can buses turn around? Is there adequate space for the bus to turn around? They'll also look at fire trucks and fire lanes and those types of things, and all of that'll be looked at once the construction plans are submitted, just like every other development.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can we put a note to Public Works about our concerns about that, about the on-street parking and our concerns that were brought up tonight?
Yes, ma'am. We'll certainly include that. Since that process is also handled through our office, we can certainly make those suggestions.
Thank you so much.
I think that is a concern, Ben, because we've seen this, and not being critical, but we've seen this, and without a wide road width, we would have a big concern with a 24-foot roadway.
Yes, sir.
And then that does change the amount of green space, if they correct.
Well, I don't want to speak out of turn, Commissioner Warren, but that's why it's important to have those minimums. When that minimum goes into DPC, when it increases from 30 to 40, we don't get to revert back to 30 if Public Works requires a wider road. We have to work with that restriction. And that's also why, as I said earlier, I don't cut that margin too tight for my client that's developing the property. When I spoke with Lucas, and as he explained, he looked at the worst lot to get the 40%. That we know that way we've got some buffer if the road is wider than we anticipate, if the drainage is more than we anticipate, or whatever it is that affects the lots, we've got some buffer built in.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions or any comments you'd like to make before I call for a motion?
Before we call for a motion, this is just an opinion. It's not being negative of Mr. Davenport or his client, but I think that any development plan conditions should be sent to us prior to the meeting instead of
Absolutely.
submitted to the staff at 4 o'clock. And I know things change, but still all the development plan conditions that were added tonight should have been given to the commissioners prior to the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Nothing else, then I'll ask for a motion. The first is for to vote on the Flume Amendment.
Make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2020-11 Flume based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed Flume amendment has met the criteria to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 1.1.4 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion includes a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Blackburn?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Abstain because of conflict.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Ritchie,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
No, ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion is 5-5. Hamp Moore.
Mr. Moore, we're at a tie.
Well, I assume you don't think I have a vote, but
No, sir,
so
but you have a resolution.
you're asking me to tell you what your options are. The zoning ordinance and KRS Chapter 100 states that in the event of a tie vote, the Planning Commission shall have the option to reconsider that vote for a period of time not to exceed 30 days. So that period of time I have stated in the past begins right now. You can choose to re-vote if you would like, or you can decide to wait for another meeting to do that. So the option is yours. If anybody would like to re-vote, change their vote, then another motion should be made, seconded, and then called for vote.
Mr. Moore, I've just got a quick question here. What you said, I know to exactly be true in the case of a zone change, but this is a future land use map amendment. So I'm flipping through the book now, but I'm wondering if that is the same, does the same apply to an amendment to the future land use map and the comprehensive plan?
Well, I'm going to step away from the camera a moment to grab my copy of the statute. So KRS 100-211 pertains to the procedure for amending the zoning map and also text of the zoning ordinance. About halfway through section 1 of 100.211, the following language appears. A tie vote shall be subject to further consideration by the Planning Commission for a period not to exceed 30 days, at the end of which, if the tie has not been broken, the application shall be forwarded to the fiscal court or legislative body without a recommendation for approval or disapproval. Now, in the case of a Flume amendment, it is a determination that is made by the Planning Commission and is not forwarded to the legislative bodies to be considered. So as we sit here at this point, the Flume amendment motion has not passed. And until the Flume amendment passes or is rejected, no action can be taken on the zone change application. So while I don't think 100-211 speaks directly to your right to reconsider your tie vote, I think that's probably an inherent right, but it's a permissive sort of thing. You don't have to take another vote. Yeah, you can conclude that this motion for Flume amendment has not passed and conclude the hearing. That's totally within your purview.
Any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Moore? Just so that we don't drop it tonight without asking, I will ask if someone would like to change their vote. I will ask for another motion. Everyone's standing firm. No motion.
Yes.
Then that is tied. That will just, our next meeting then, will we have to address this, or will that go on as done?
Hamp, may I speak on this, please?
Yes, of course you may, subject to Ms. Runner's.
Yeah, Ms. Runner, that question's better posed to you.
Yes, sir.
I think Hamp's analysis is correct, at least insofar as he's referring to the commercial frontage. I'll remind the commission that the single-family development is flume compliant. So, Hamp, and that may not change your how you look at it, but just wanted to give breath to that thought.
Well, I interpret your statement to, I'm not sure what you're asking the commission to do. So let me just put it to you that way.
I'm probably not asking them to do anything right now, Hamp. I think I'm thinking through this like everybody else is. So,
Ms. Runner, it would seem to me that at this point, the application for flume amendment has not passed tonight. And that because of that, you cannot move forward with the other application that's on your docket as it pertains to the zoning map amendment. That would be my observation at this point. Certainly willing to hear anybody else's viewpoint on the subject.
Would this come up at the next meeting under old business? Would we bring it up again?
It would be my impression, my belief, Ms. Clark, that our business under this application has been concluded, and that while the application can be withdrawn and refiled, I doubt if that's in time for the next meeting. Anything further on this matter would have to be the subject of a new application.
I would agree.
I would like to make a suggestion that the applicant comes back with a new application, and the concept plan would be further, more defined, not necessarily the commercial component of it, but that all the development plan conditions be written out in a form that everybody can see, and everything is to where we understand it. I think there's some confusion tonight, and that it was done later than we had a chance to understand it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Thank you. And with that, that finishes the public hearing, and that brings us to discussion items. Thank you all. Mr. Peterson, do you have anything for us?
No, just that the zoning ordinance changes are still continuing through the legislative bodies. And we'll just update you once we start getting final approvals on those.
Thank you, sir. Anything from the commissioners before we adjourn?
May I ask just a question for my own learning?
Yes, ma'am.
When we go through these and we look at the restrictions, we look at what's in there, is there a policing body, for lack of a better word, that makes sure that everything is done to what they've submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the simple answer is yes, but it's usually a combination of our office and usually either the public works, one of the public works office, or the city or the county, or the permitting office. One of those three entities police that.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else? Nothing else? Thank you all tonight. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.